Good morning, members. It's the appointed time. We have a quorum. It's the first meeting of this year of the Public Works Subcommittee. First of all, I thank members for your support, and I'm also glad to work with members in the coming year. Deputy Chair and I will chair the meetings in the upcoming year. I look forward to working with the Secretariat in considering the funding proposals submitted by the administration in the upcoming year. First agenda item, we need to consider Mrs. Regina Suk-yee's application for late membership. The reasons given by Mrs. Regina Ip have already been set out in her letter. The letter has already been uploaded onto the electrical website on the 24th of January. In accordance with paragraph 4A of the Public Works Subcommittee procedure, members consider the application for late membership, that is, whether to accept such an application. I'd like to ask members regarding Mrs. Regina Ip's application for late membership. Any objection? No objection. Let's welcome Mrs. Regina Ip for joining the Public Works Subcommittee. Then, on to the next agenda item, a document for members' discussion. It is about a funding proposal in relation to the implementation of light public housing, LPH. I remind members, if you have any direct or indirect pecuniary interest in the item being discussed today, in accordance with Rule 83A of the Rules of Procedures, please disclose the nature of the relevant interest before you speak. Please also pay attention to the Rule 84 of the Rules of Procedures regarding voting in case of direct pecuniary interest. First of all, let us welcome officials from the administration to join us. As I said, this document is about the implementation of light public housing, LPH. The paper proposes the upgrading of the remainder of 1HL to Category A at an estimated cost of $9.8374 billion in money of the day prices. On the 15th of December 2023, the administration consulted the panel on housing about this proposed project. Members agreed to submit this funding proposal to this subcommittee for consideration. The main points of discussion in the panel meeting were sent to members on the 29th of January 2024 by email. With us today are Ms. Winnie Ho, Secretary for Housing, Mr. Santa Law, Permanent Secretary for Housing, Ms. Winnie Wong, Deputy Secretary for Housing Special Duties, Mr. Cyrus Zhang, Deputy Head, Task Force on Transitional Housing of the Housing Bureau, Mr. Michael Lee, Director of Architectural Services, and Mr. Edward Wong, Project Director of the ASD. Welcome, officials. It's now time for members to ask questions. A total of 30 members have pressed a button. Members in order are Mr. Chen Xiu-hong, Stanley Lee, Andrew Lam, Yang Wen-kit, Dr. Chow Man-kong, Mr. Xiang Hailong, Stanley Ng, Lau Kok-fan, Lam Chen-sing, Dr. Hui Simon Lee, Mr. Lang Man-kwong, Chu Kwok-kang, Lee Chen-kang, and Mr. Bill Tang. 40 members in total. First of all, Mr. Chen, 4 minutes, please. Any introduction by the administration? If no, we'll go straight into question and answer. Thank you, Chairman. When the LPH project is implemented, we are very much concerned about it. We do want to see measures to shorten the wait for inadequate households. We were concerned about the construction costs. The administration worked very hard. They work as a team to look for land to reduce the costs. We are pleased to see the first batch of the LPH had already have its tender price returned. Construction will take place soon. The Secretary mentioned that there was room for reduction, so in the groundwork and the design of the second batch, it is likely that the overall cost could be brought down. We can see the efforts of the administration to look for land to reduce the costs in response to the public's needs. We do want to see early implementation of the project in order to provide 30,000 units. In the implementation of the works, from the perspective of design or costs, I'm glad to have opportunities to discuss with the administration. I thank the administration for making arrangements. We went to see how the MIC modules could be reused. 98% of the modules could be reused, and this is good. That is because the overall costs could be reduced. The question I'd like to ask is that the cost could be brought down. Some 15% of the overall costs in the second batch can be brought down, having taken stock of the experience from the first batch. According to the Secretary, the main reason is that the design is more cost-effective and the reduced cost of raw materials. There is an adjustment in the cost in the second batch. What about the percentage? When it has been applied to the second batch, is the percentage actually similar? 600 units in the second batch will be from vacant or to be vacant school premises. They are not suitable for housing yet. Some internal works, pipes, kitchen utilities, toilets, these works will have to be implemented. These are not easy, so there will be construction costs. There are just general figures in the document. Can you provide us with a more detailed breakdown? I'd like to know the breakdown of the 600-odd units to see whether it is well worth the money. Any difficulty you have predicted? Secretary Ms. Ho, please. It's almost 4 minutes. I'll try to answer members' questions succinctly. Thank you, Mr. Chen, for your question. Regarding the percentage, as we can see from the document, $1.69 billion have been saved. As Mr. Chen mentioned, the design of the MIC modules made the project more cost-effective. The ASD thought that, well, concrete would be used, but then because the steel structure used, it is lighter, hence the lower cost. The steel material cost has also decreased by some 10%. In Lin Tong Mei, a parcel of land over there had quite high development costs. There were also storage facilities that had to be conducted. A total of $900 million will be saved. Suppliers will also conduct surveys which will reduce $400 million. Another $200 million have already been saved, as have storage, collection, and treatment facilities. In some transitional housing projects, there will also be some school premises. Using the basis of $500,000, 600 units will be provided. In some school premises in public housing estates, these are matchbox-style school premises. There isn't even any playground. For example, for the School of St. Joseph, the outdoor facilities will be more expensive considering the area of the relevant facilities. I'd like to follow up on the amount of $1.69 billion. The Secretary mentioned 200 or $400 million. Can you supplement further information? MIC will be the main trend of design. This is a quite good experience. We can accumulate this experience from the perspective of design, overall construction, in considering future public works projects. These will serve as good reference. So, Secretary can provide information afterwards. Next, Mr. Stanley Lee. The administration has been given us detailed information. On the 22nd of December, the Secretary also went with us to a site visit. We also liaise with some residents of a private housing estate nearby regarding the design of the units. Can we add smaller shops? This is to provide convenience to the LPH households or residents nearby. Parking spaces are also close to our heart. These residents may not have their own private cars, but they may have commercial vehicles, so parking spaces are a concern. Is it possible that the administration can give some explanations about the choice of these venues? Next, on the design and the direction. Given the close proximity geographically, well, I think more communication will be better. Next, turning to the point of accessibility. It is quite near MTR station. There is a bus stop off the LPH project. Can you communicate with the transport department in response to the population intake increase, the number of transport options in a nearby area? First of all, I thank Mr. Stanley Lee for contacting the Undersecretary. You also contacted the residents in the locality so that we will be able to tap their pulse. We'll continue with communication with the residents nearby. We can provide smaller shops so that residents nearby as well as LPH households can also take advantage of these shops. Actually, for transitional housing projects, they are very glad to see smaller shops as they will also be able to provide service to these residents. Regarding the parking spaces for commercial vehicles, we'll continue our dialogue with the transport department. That is whether there is any roadside parking for commercial vehicles, any temporary car parks to provide more parking spaces for commercial vehicles. We'll continue to communicate with the transport department. Regarding the design, we can maintain a close dialogue with residents in Lei Yu Mun. The ASD representative is with us. They will consider the color scheme of the project so that they will look appealing to residents. There will also be greening in the vicinity, improving the environment nearby. Regarding traffic, we'll continue to work with the TD. For example, for the alignment or frequency of bus routes, the TD has promised that they will increase the number of bus journeys.
Next, Mr. Andrew Lam. Thank you, Chair. The last batch of LPH was introduced to the housing panel. There was a saving of 20% after tender prices were received. Of course, that is something we welcome. However, in the paper, there was no mention or there was no breakdown of figures with regard to the savings. This time round, there is also a saving of 15% in the budget. Again, it is something desirable. Well, last batch, we were able to save 20%. For this batch, we have got a few hundred units from vacant school premises. At least we can save $90,000 per unit. My understanding is MIC has been used for a while and prices are falling for these modules. And we can also achieve economy of scale. Theoretically, the tender prices should further go down. Given these positive factors, how come in your budget or compared with the last is only 15% lower? I understand that there may be more high-rising units here. Last time we had mainly 3 to 4 story structures. We're not able to compare the tender prices for this and the last. Last time it was $14.9 billion, a reduction of 20% using that figure. Now, the percentage of site formation works, I'm not able to do any comparison, but this time it's about 10% higher. Is it because the site formation cost is higher this time? I'd like to know whether there is room for a further, let's say, we're not talking about lowering the budget, but I'd like to know whether there is a possibility of making more savings. Thank you. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Lam and Chair. Mr. Lam has pointed out one reason. The first batch of LPH or low rises at Yau Kok Road, the structures are mainly 3 stories. Otherwise, we have talked about 19 to 20 stories tall. So the piling works and for site formation are different. For high rises, the piles have to be much deeper, and the second batch has got one on Choi Hing. The bed rock there is quite deep, so while we can use a podium-like structure in lieu of piling works for other buildings, then piles are 15 to 20 meters deep. So for the second batch of LPH, the savings are only 15%, as pointed out by Mr. Andrew Lam, and the main difference is the cost for piling. Follow-up, I will wait for another term. Mr. Yang Wing-kit. Thank you, Chair. The second batch will be $1.69 billion lower than the first. That is welcome. Most important of all, we can use vacant school premises. A subject close to my heart. We are going to use VSP's vacant school premises for housing. While they can only provide 600 units, I think this is still a good thing. The thing is, how can we attract people to opt for VSP premises? Take Baptist Rainbow Primary School's example is uphill in Suk-yee. It's not really very accessible. You need to take shuttle or buses. Now, people are very smart. If they have urban areas, of course, they will go for Kai-tak to encourage people to choose Suk-yee. Now, the number of units is not too many, and taking into account the traffic factor, can you make a Rainbow Primary School more attractive? For instance, can you increase the frequency of bus service? Can you add a bus route to Kowloon Tong, although there is already a GMB route, but it is already saturated? If you add another bus route, you will enhance the attractiveness of Baptist Rainbow Primary School. Now, you told us that the unit cost for VSP units is $900,000, but you have not taken into account another aspect. Now, it's not like other LPH you can demolish the MICs for reuse, but for VSPs, you have to take into account the reinstatement cost. Is it that you have not taken into account the reinstatement cost because you will ask the next users to foot the bill? Have you discussed with the Education Bureau? Thank you, Mr. Young. I like to promote the VSP LPH sites. They are at prime locations. There are 3 sites in Kwun Tong and 1 in Wong Tai Shin, and the one is Shangshui, but is very near the Shangshui MTR station, so they are very accessible. And for VSPs, we mainly convert classrooms for housing. There are facilities in VSPs. For instance, there is a school hall, some has got a library. Some of the libraries are very well decorated. They will be retained, and the school halls are useful for resident activities. Some school premises are matchbox types. They may not have any football facilities, but if there are good ancillary facilities nearby in terms of shopping mall and playground and etc. Now, for traffic aspect, Mr. Young mentioned the Wong Tai Sin. We will closely monitor, liaise with the Transport Department to see whether there is room for improvement. We can continue our discussion there. As for conversion, this time we convert VSPs. All costs will go into this project. Some years afterwards, there may be a next user for the VSP. Depending on the use, we will budget in the cost next time. Thank you. Dr. Chow Meng Kwong. Thank you, Chair. I really appreciate the fact that the administration has taken on board views from members, including from G19. There are 5 VSPs or to be VSPs included in the second batch, and then Lin Tong Mei in Shangshui is now abandoned. Last year, $52 million were budgeted for advanced works for the LPH projects. Now, I'd like to know how will the government deal with the budget and also the site for LPH projects now abandoned. I'd like to know for the second batch, will the government carry out demand survey to understand the supply and demand situation to see whether they are really welcomed by subdivided unit households, so that you conduct a survey first before construction, and you should go for urban areas before the rural areas. As we know, we have a fiscal deficit, so you have to be very prudent and see whether further savings can be made. Now, for LPH, 70% are 1P unit, 20% 2 to 3P units. Only 7% are for 5 to 6P households. So for the LPH, most of them are small units. I'd like to know whether you have taken into account the household mix in the PRH waiting list. Is it true that there are more small households waiting for PRH? My concern is there in fact a greater demand for medium-sized households. I hope you will not just take care of the modules. You have to be people-oriented in designing the LPH. First, Lin Tang Mei in Shangshui will not be used because of the low cost effectiveness. We have identified alternative sites, and that's one of the reasons why the construction cost is lower. Advanced works include, now if we are to develop Lin Tang Mei, we will consider the utilities cost and land survey costs, etc. The information obtained through these studies is still useful. It will be properly maintained or retained, and if the site is to be developed in the future, we are happy to share such information with other project proponents. As regards user survey, yes, we have done that. And we've also obtained views from members that there should be more sites in the urban areas. So for the first and second batch of LPH, 30,000 units available. More than half of them are in the urban areas. If we take into account units in Tuen Mun, 9% of them are in developed areas, with the exception of Yau Kwok Do with 1,200 units. They are really in Yuen Long in the NT. Hopefully, we can address the aspirations of the public. As for the overall ratio for the first and second batches, for 1P units, 70%, 3 to 4P units, 20%, and 7% for 5 to 6P units. We have obtained information from transitional housing. In fact, sometimes we don't have enough supply for larger households, so we have increased the supply of large units by 4 to 5 units. Mr. Shanghai Lo, thank you. With regard to the percentage, we're told that about 10% of them are for 4 to 5P households, but according to the paper here, it should be 7%. So I have some query compared with the first batch. What is the basis for changing this mix? I speak in support of the paper because it is really a very good policy from this term of government. The first batch has already been launched, and we have the second batch to follow. And of course, there is room for improvement. I've got two questions. After has recently amended the relevant legislation to ensure that there will be mobile telecommunications facilities for different areas. I'd like to know whether you have catered for that. And for the annex, you will allow people to live in LPH until they are allocated PRH. Recently, we heard that $3,000 in reward will be given to people who report on abuse of PRH. Have you assessed the average waiting time or average time for transition from LPH to PRH? Because according to the administration, you will only ask people to move out of LPH after PRH has been offered. Now, usually 3 offers will be given. So have you assessed the duration of stay in LPH?
Secretary, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shang. As I mentioned, the first batch and the second batch combined, 70%, 20%, and 10% overall. The first batch differ slightly from the second batch. Mainly, we take into account the layout and the circumstances of construction site. School premises are a little bit special. We may be able to provide larger units on school premises owing to the design and layout of the construction sites. There is slight discrepancy, but we can still conform to the ratio of 70%, 20%, and 10%. I thank Mr. Shang for floating the point about OFCA. We already noticed this point when we started with the first batch. From what we heard from citizens in Kai Tak, Wi-Fi reception was quite poor. Right away, we communicated with OFCA to improve the signal over there. We do want to improve the entire district over there, not just infrastructures or light public housing. We do want to improve the facilities or infrastructures overall in the area. It takes some 5.6 years overall for public housing units. After some 2 to 3 years, they will be able to obtain a traditional public housing unit. We haven't yet stopped. Instead, we are proceeding with traditional public housing full steam ahead. We do want to provide flats to Hong Kong citizens. For people living in inadequate housing, we hope to provide light public housing for these inadequately housed households. We estimate 2 to 3 years before they can have a traditional public housing unit, or when some residents have to move away from Kai Tak. That is, we promised 5 years. We'll also make good arrangements with operators to move these batch of households to other sites. Some LPH households may be able to stay for a longer period and will take into account the latest situation at that time. Next, Mr. Stanley Ng. Thank you, Chairman. We do want the administration to reduce the costs. Now the costs have been brought down to some $9.84 billion. If we need to build 13,000 units, $9.84 billion, the public will make a division. That is, per unit, it costs some 750,000. It's a matter of perception. In the documents, the administration has already detailed the costs, that is $500,000 to $600,000 per unit. Apart from the unit cost of light public housing, there are also land formation works, road improvement works, etc. Can the administration give us more details about these infrastructures? Can these infrastructures be used in the future? Or else, members of the public will factor in the total cost. So the administration may need to give a clearer explanation to the public. We also need to make good use of these LPH. They can be used for a period of 5 years. For citizens waiting for public rental housing, they can only apply after waiting for 3 years. So 2 years of living in LPH after a waiting period of 3 years, they will have to move out. Luckily enough, they may be able to obtain a home. But for the remaining 3 years, other people will have to move in. So should we set down a more reasonable time period so that LPH occupants do not have to move one time after the other? Can we implement better arrangements? Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Stanley Ng's questions. First of all, it is set out clearly in the document. per PIC module or box, the cost is $590,000. Much cheaper than the original estimate of $650,000. Even for transitional housing that are low rises, the cost is some $550,000. Right now we have 23 stories to 24 stories. The average cost is still $590,000. Using the overall figures, Mr. Stanley Ng is correct. We can arrive at the figure of $760,000. There are many basic facilities such as in Siulam. We have to make arrangements for a bus stop. Given the larger size of population, we want to provide convenience to residents. The bus stop can actually stay there. Depending on the long-term development use of the land, in Siulam there is a pumping station of sewerage. It can also be used in the future to dovetail with other projects. For the piling works or the piles in existing construction sites, if they can be used in future works, these underground piles can be reused in the future. The ASD is responsible for the construction, so they will be kept well. In the future projects, they will be able to be reused. Regarding LPH arrangements using transitional housing as an example, this category of people are actually applying for public rental housing. After living for 1 year, they may be able to move to public rental housing. So for this turnover, we have already factored in the current situation. People have to move in and move out. Transitional housing has an occupancy rate of 113%. That is to say 13% of the people will move in and out for yet another group of people. This is the arrangement put in place right now. Well, I think Mr. Stanley Ng would like the administration to further reduce the time that residents need to move in and move out once again, so that there can be less hassle. Mr. Stanley Ng referred to 5 years. This is our basis. In my answer to another member's question, some parcels of land have a serviceable period of longer than 5 years. If possible, we do want some projects to be able to be used for a longer period. Next, Mr. Lau Kok Fan. Thank you, Chairman. I thank the administration for taking on board our views. When we were discussing the site in Lintongmei, Shangshui, we also found that it was quite remote. There was a accessibility issue. There were concerns. We shouldn't bulldoze this project through if the problem can't be solved. After considering the situation, the administration thinks that it is not cost-effective, so it is not going to proceed with this project. At present, the choice of sites is very good. We also visited the school premises in Shangshui, that is, which will be converted into light public housing. A walk to the nearby MTR station will take 3 to 5 minutes. That is convenient. This location is very good. If we can implement it, it will be very good. On that day, we went with different people such as district councillors. They gave very good opinions. The undersecretary also answered some questions on the spot. They made some promises. That is why we support this project. Light public housing may be used for 5 years. The first batch will be completed in 7 years, so to a certain degree, major housing issues will be able to be addressed. As I can see, this is a backloaded approach. I can expect more public rental housing units to be rolled out near the end of the project. While these schools are smaller, so it may not be appropriate to use the millennium age schools. They are larger in general. We may consider converting these facilities into welfare facilities for the elderly. So I'd like to know from the perspective of design if they are considered suitable. Some members are concerned about the future use of these facilities. We may consider converting them into facilities for the elderly so that they can be used for other purposes, such as the principle of one single site, multiple uses, so that these resources will not go to waste in the future. They can be reused. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Lau. Once again, I thank Mr. Lau for making arrangements together with the Undersecretary. We discussed with residents in Shangshui. We had a discussion on the spot and will continue to follow up on the opinions received. 5-year period is a basis. Whether we can extend the period, we'll see. If some light public housing venues are good, can we extend the period? Or when it is up for future development use, we'll bear Mr. Lau's opinions in mind regarding the scale of facilities for the elderly and schools. They actually match one another quite well. We can carry out conversions within these facilities, and this is a feasible option. Next, Mr. Lam Chen Sing. First of all, I'm concerned about the transport arrangements in Lot On Pai. It is the only LPH project that is not near any MTR station. Are there sufficient minibus or bus routes when there are 10,000 more people who move in? There are many private housing units flanking Castle Peak Road. So with the rollout of LPH in Lot On Pai, have you done any assessment about traffic or transportation in the nearby area? For the light public housing in Ma On Shan, no assessments have been conducted. I understand time is of the essence. But if there are no preliminary traffic or environmental assessments as of yet, is that not ideal? It may not take up a large area, but it will have an impact on traffic in a nearby area. There is a station nearby, and there may be many people who are waiting for transport in the future. Some may cross the road to the MTR station or Zhong'an Estate. There is also an informal road crossing leading to the sports complex nearby. Some may jaywalk, and this is not a good phenomenon. When you conduct traffic impact assessment or environmental impact assessment, will you provide us with supplementary documents? Next, while converting some school premises into light public housing, some buildings are as old as 40 years. Have you factored in the maintenance costs? For example, water leakage, water seepage. Whom should they consult? How should the situation be dealt with? Thank you.
Secretary. Thank you. The traffic arrangement for Lock-on Pi. We have taken note of that because when the project was first announced, there were views already. So we have done some preparation. We have reserved money next to the Lock-on Pi LPH site for constructing a bus lay-by. There can be used for a few bus routes for taking people to Tai Lam interchange or urban areas in Tuen Mun to facilitate their shopping and transferring to other public transport. And we have got proposal to widen the road from Castle Peak Road to Cheng Fat Street. There is a proposal to widen the junction, and from Tuen Mun Highway Low to the Gold Coast first section, there will be an additional lane to enhance the traffic capacity. So the team has devoted the attention to improve the traffic, and the Transport Department has promised to monitor the situation in making additional traffic arrangement. As for Ma On Shan, we are now doing the EIA and also traffic impact assessment. So the site at Ma On Shan will commence a bit later, pending the completion of all assessments, and then the ASD will start tendering and construction. The bus stop nearby, I thank Mr. Lam for telling us some of the practical points there. For instance, improvement of some of the road crossing facilities. We will liaise with the relevant department for improving the situation. As for VSPs and repair maintenance of LPH in the operating contract, we have taken into account the cost for R&P. Mr. Lang Meng Kwang, I support the paper. I appreciate the efforts by the administration. In the first batch, we queried the high construction costs and whether the sites were suitable. The government has taken decisive steps to give up a site for low cost effectiveness, and we hope to see early implementation of the LPH to improve the housing condition of people living in substandard STUs. So the second batch should be supported by us. I've got some questions. The first is 600 units will come from VSPs. According to the paper, some assessment and design will be done. I'd like to know whether they have encountered technical difficulties, given that some VSPs are rather old and the conditions may not be very good. Will that add to your conversion cost? And according to the Secretary, some facilities should be retained. How will that blend in with the existing community? In some districts, there is shortage of, say, community halls and football pitches or playground. Would these facilities be open to the public? Now, recently, we are talking about municipal solid municipal waste charge, and the green community stations might not have covered all districts or all areas, and we don't have enough places for sorting. Can we use some of the sites of the LPH for that? I'd like to know whether there can be public participation in LPH, so the potential users, people on the PRH waiting list for a long time, can we have input from them on facilities they want in LPH, so that these facilities can be incorporated in your design so that services provided can better meet the needs of future users? Secretary, thank you. Mr. Lang, thank you for your support of the program. I said this is a very important step for us in resolving the STU situation. Now we have experience in Stanley and Samsung Chun in converting VSPs to housing. Well, technically, they are not particularly challenging. Take the St. Joseph's School as an example. It has been vacant for more than a decade. It's not being used for storage of materials. So we have to replace the electrical and mechanical services, installations like the pumps, etc. So relatively speaking, it may be more costly for this site. For other school premises, they are still in use. So the R&M are in good condition. So the cost will be lower. It is our objective in LPH to provide supporting facilities such as small shops and laundry places and study rooms and activity rooms. We intend to open these facilities to the public to benefit the whole neighborhood. So we're grateful to members. We have received views from members in the past and even now. And if any facilities are needed for a particular project, we're happy to discuss with the future operator. What about publicity and promotion? Yes, this is an important point. We plan to, perhaps in the middle of this year, when the time is right, to accept applications. Now, for transitional housing, we have held open days. We arranged transport to take potential users to take a look at the environment and the traffic conditions of these sites. That was very useful for marketing or promoting the transitional housing. Will do the same for LPH. You can also invite current users to share their experience. Yes, that's good. Mr. Ju Kwok Kang, thank you. I support the funding application for building the 13 LPH projects. And it's also good to use vacant school premises for LPH. Young kids in LPH need childcare services, and I'd like to know whether you will reserve ground floor space for non-profit making KGs with childcare services to operate, so that the children from LPH can go to school near their home, because childcare services are very expensive now. There isn't sufficient subvention from the government. If this can be done for LPH, that will be excellent. Some VSPs are quite old. Some may require more conversion. Take the St. Joseph's Anglo-Chinese School in Kwun Tong. I heard that many classrooms are triangular in shape. So how can you turn these classrooms into practical and usable units? Secretary, thank you. I welcome views from members in relation to facilities to be provided. Take Tuen Mun Area 50 for example. We've received views that there should be more facilities for young kids, such as study rooms, activity rooms, and childcare services. We will discuss with the operator to see how that can be provided. We will maintain our communication with the people in the community. As for the shape of classrooms of St. Joseph's School, yes, some of them are like that. But in fact, the floor plan may look irregular. The footprint may look irregular, but then the classrooms are regular. Sometimes they accommodate plant rooms, etc., in some corner space. But for the classrooms, the shape is very irregular. Thank you. Mr. Lee Chan-keung. According to the paper, we are going to have a second batch of LPH projects. I fully welcome this because we need LPH for people living in substandard condition to move in as soon as possible. I think people have the misunderstanding that LPH is 2 plus 5 years. But if I look at the paper, in fact, the duration of stay should be 2 plus N. Many of the modules can be reused. For Shongwang Toy, the modules were demolished for use in Choi Hong. So this time we're able to save 15% in materials because of this. But I think the estimate is on the conservative side. You can actually save more. I'd like to know the lifespan of these modules. If it's 10, 20, or even up to 50 years, then if you spread out the cost over the years, in fact, that will mean a big savings for our public coffers. In future, we can have student quarters or light workers quarters, etc. The LPH will be built of concrete. In the mainland, they use steel structures to provide a framework. I once shared this with you. The merit is the steel structures can be demolished and reused. It's not like cement or concrete where you have to demolish them, causing environmental nuisance. So you can further improve your design. You can use different construction materials for LPH for reuse in the future. Now we have got newly established district councils. I'd like to know whether district councillors can be invited to visit LPHs so that they can understand the merits and help to promote them. Thank you, Secretary. I thank Mr. Lee for raising this point. We want to provide LPH quickly. We are creating a new construction model. In future, we'll no longer talk about demolishing a building. Rather, we are relocating a unit. LPH can be moved to another place. We can reuse it, and the media sometimes call it revitalization or giving a new life to these structures. With changes in the demography in the future, we cannot 100% predict the trend. A few years back, we could not envisage the need for isolation facilities to fight the pandemic. We did not envisage that we need housing for imported labor. But this kind of construction is flexible. The structures can be moved and relocated to cater for future challenges. All these will be included in our tender documents so that the construction team understand that these modules can be relocated to another place. So we visited one site not long ago, and we have got 1 or 2 LPH projects. We have not rounded up the total cost. Now, if we take into account modules that can be reused, we can save the construction cost by 60%. But of course, in the removal cost and also reconstruction of pipes, of course, all that need money. For the Kai Tak project, now usually we use solid concrete walls in high rises. This time, the contract is proposing steel structures so that the superstructure is lighter. We can save in material costs, and the foundation works can also be less expensive because of the lower loading. So we are very grateful to these suggestions. if district council members are interested in visiting the LPH and how we can reuse transitional housing, we welcome them.
Next, Mr. Bill Tang. Thank you, Chairman. Writing on Mr. Lee's question, I can supplement. VSPs are often mentioned in the document. Most of them are in Kowloon East. So together with Dr. Ngaman Yu, I was asked to contact the district councillors. The Undersecretary also took part in the discussion. So about 30 district councillors in Kwun Tong have already conducted a site visit. The proactive communication is very good. It sounds easy to convert VSPs. As I understand, it takes a very long time to convert these VSPs. School sponsoring bodies need to leave their capacity, and when these VSPs are found to have no educational purposes, these will be released for future development for other purposes. So we can say that these VSPs are seamlessly transitioning into LPH. Well, I should say there is a good plan when some school premises will be re-provisioned. So the Education Bureau takes the initiative to collaborate with the Housing Bureau to make this seamless transition possible. The administration has already picked up the pace. This is commendable. As always, the FTU expresses great support for light public housing, but we'd like to enhance the efficiency. Just now, Mr. Stanley Ng asked how we could prevent moving in and out again. So when the second batch of LPH funding is green-lighted, can we implement advanced registration, or should we ask these households about their preferences first so that we can make arrangements earlier? Thank you, Mr. Tang. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all district councillors from either Kwun Tong, Huang Tai Sin, or Shangshui. After the improved district governance, district councillors are very willing to collaborate with us. The Undersecretary also told me that the team thanked district councillors for their help. I'd like to thank the Education Bureau as well. The decanting program of schools has been factored in. In fact, for the parcels of land in Mao Anshan, the Education Bureau contacted the Development Bureau, and we were told that we could contact the ASD to see whether this parcel of land can be used to develop LPH. We've been proactive. We'll continue with our communication with the district level proactively. We will also see the application status in due course. In the middle of this year, application period will start, before which we'll start publicity, and we'll also tap the pulse of the community. Next, Ms. Lillian Kwok. Thank you, Chairman. I also thank the administration for taking on board our view and making good use of VSPs. Member just now mentioned that they would like to seek breakdowns from the administration. On the third point, some citizens still pointed out that on average they would live in these units for 2 to 3 years, assuming they still cannot obtain a public rental housing unit. What are the arrangements? Well, I think the Secretary should explain once again to give citizens peace of mind. Next, turning to community facilities. For smaller school premises, probably the units will be smaller, but for larger projects such as Kai-tak, there will be as many as 10,000 households. We have municipal solid waste charging. Are there any recycling facilities? Do you have any budget earmarked for this initiative? For childcare services, many families are new families in the sense that they will give birth to children soon. So, childcare services are on the front burner for them. Will you incorporate the concept of community support or community living rooms? Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Lillian Kwok. Just now, the wait is on average 5 to 6 years. Mainly, we target applicants with 3 years of waiting time. About 2 to 3 years later, they'll be able to move into public rental housing units. So we use the operational period of 5 years of LPH as a basis, and we'll see whether some individual projects can stay for a longer period. When households move out owing to different reasons, we will also communicate with operators to identify other LPH units or transitional housing units in order to make moving out convenient. Regarding recycling, these LPH units are light, but then we have already drawn reference from public rental housing in relation to recycling facilities. We'll adopt the same practice in relation to recycling facilities. For example, if we have food waste collectors in place, we can make arrangements in order to provide such facilities in these areas as well. Mr. Tang Fei. Thank you, Chairman. I thank Secretary for explaining to us. The PWSC was invited to visit transitional housing. It was a very good arrangement. We not only read the papers provided by the administration, but we also went to conduct a site visit to see these houses in the flesh. In paragraph 17 of the paper, 5 VSPs will be converted into light public housing. I'm not too much concerned about the facilities or transport arrangements in the vicinity of schools. Few schools are on the top side of MTR stations, so there will not be ultra-low accessibility. In the planning of school premises, usually the community facilities or restaurants distribution are actually quite good. Usually these projects will have 5 to 8 stories, and 24 meters are the cap for school premises. Some 24 meters are the height limit, owing to safety concerns. The highest school has 7 stories, but I can see 5 to 8 stories in the paper. So, one fundamental question. Have you considered regularizing LPH units into ordinary public rental housing units? Unless you use the playground as well to max out the plot ratio. Otherwise, these buildings will simply be single buildings. If they are LPH units, people will have to move in and out after all. So we might as well turn them into single buildings. Take Kowloon City, Huangtaixin, Shamshui-Po. There may be about 20 blocks, and there are only 2 to 3 blocks for the buildings or the development on Hong Kong Island. So maybe you can regularize the project, and these units can be turned into ordinary public rental housing for one single block. You can even have more stories. Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Tang. Thank you for your support for our arrangements of a site visit. We'll continue to make such arrangements in the future so that you can keep a close eye on the implementation of the projects. There are school premises of as high as 8 stories. The 8th story might be teachers' rooms, which are not accessible to students. Meanwhile, we will also have elevators which provide convenience to residents, even if they have to go up higher. We touched upon this point, actually. We have been implementing different housing projects full steam ahead. For building new houses, the team responsible for this project has been working at full pelt, expediting the identification of land and the construction of houses. Before we have long-term development of some particular pieces of land, we'll seize upon the opportunity and build light public housing on these pieces of land. A couple of schools are near public rental housing units. They are quite old, that is, they are matchbox school premises. They do not have playgrounds. They are in close proximity to public basketball courts, for example. So these matchbox schools take up a small area. It is questionable whether we can even build a single block of public rental housing. So we need to have long-term overall planning to see how we can make this possible. That is exactly why we'd like to take this opportunity to build light public housing in this transitional period. And this is the spirit behind this project. Next, Ms. Lam So-wai. Thank you, Chairman. I thank the Housing Bureau's invitation. We went to the light public housing project on Choi Hing Road. I've been engaged in district work. I thank the administration for showing us the process that is from MIC to completion. In Chengkwano, Ma On Shan, there are a couple of transitional housing projects and LPH projects. The chairman is well aware of that. I commend this project, and I also express support for LPH units. Hong Kong is in dire straits. Many people in Hong Kong are living in subdivided units. Solving these housing issues is high on the agenda. In the future, we are going to conduct EIA for Ma On Shan LPH units. I hope there will be more community facilities. I went with the district councillors in Sha Tin and the undersecretary to the site for a visit. I was a social worker myself. I hope there could be social integration with the LPH project. There could be a warm color tone on the facade of this building. There are many middle-class citizens living in the area. Ma On Shan is an energetic community. It is a young community. Many people are living in this community. So how can we integrate the let public housing project into the community. And we need to go global. We need to have a global vision. How can we let members of the public know? How can we tell the Chinese that how we care about new arrivals and members of the public with LPH unit? We need to care for the new arrivals moving into Ma On Shan. So we can consider introducing the concept of community living room and a smaller wet market to provide more options for the residents living nearby. The grassroots cannot afford the high price of buying groceries in the locality. It may cost as much as $40 per caddy of vegetables. And I also hope that the administration will closely monitor the LPH projects in Wukai Sha, for example, in a project run by Donghua Group. I hope there will be fewer complaints. I received complaints from residents in a private housing estate that there are noises or pollution. In Changquano, there are 2 transitional housing developments. They are in different areas. One is in the vicinity of a French international school. Many district councillors also reflected to me that in the operation of these projects, they hope there could be more facilities showing support for the grassroots. A plate of rice may cost as high as $80. Secretary, please.
Secretary, thank you, Ms. Lam, for your views. I thank Ms. Lam's commendation for arrangements when will continue when where appropriate. Ms. Lam, you asked whether the Ma On Shan project can. Now it is a VSP. Can we invite the design team to discuss with the school just opposite VSP, the VSP there, to see whether students can be involved in the design of the walls, etc. Yes, I hope PSC has heard Ms. Lam's views and consider the arrangements. And as for community living room, we have such activity rooms in our LPH to facilitate activities to be run by residents. We can have, for instance, employment counseling, etc. Yes, we will ask the operator of LPH to consider for small shops. Yes, we will make arrangement for that. But if you expect large-scale supermarkets and wet markets, I'm afraid they will have to go to shopping malls and a PRH nearby for small eateries and shops where possible. Hopefully we can discuss with the operators to see whether we can have these facilities in our LPH. Ms. Lam mentioned Wukai Sa and Changquan O, and also problems associated with the transitional housing there. I welcome views from Ms. Lam. You can let us have more information after the meeting. Thank you. Mr. Michael Tian. Now for LPH, my greatest concern is the utilization rate. For the last batch of LPH, I abstained from voting. Now for NT-LPH projects, I have a great reservation. Now, some say it's only 10 minutes away from West Rail Station. It's been half year, but only Class A tenants that have been waiting there, waiting for PRH for 3 years plus Cat B willing to move in, and the project is still not fully taken up unless you give more units for Cat B residents. I'm not too sure that the NT-LPH units will be fully taken up. You promised us that you will not waste government resources, and so even for PRH applicants that have been waited, who haven't been waiting for more than 3 years, will be eligible. I hope you can honor your undertaking. All right. So much for the take-up rate. Now I'd like to talk about the TNT aspect. In Siu Lam, Lok Kon Pai, you're going to provide 4,200 units. You talked about shuttle buses, whether free or not, or otherwise, to take people to Tuen Mun interchange. This is 2.5 kilometers in length. The Castle Peak Road here is already heavily congested. Another 4,000 units will move in, and they will have to commute during the peak hours. Have you done any preliminary assessment? How many more trips of buses, the number of additional trips required? Many residents living in this area in Tuen Mun have to drive to this area. Now, this is not a short distance, 2.5 kilometers. There is no way out, no railway station. You cannot ask people to drive to Tuen Mun to ride the railway to the urban area. This is impossible. The second question is aviation noise. Since the commissioning of the third runway in the airport, we're receiving complaints from residents regarding noise. We have had a few meetings with the AA. They use NEF 25 as the standard, saying that there is no aviation noise nuisance. Now, Siu Lam is here. NEF is in the blue circle, green and the blue lines some distance apart, and residents are saying that they cannot have any sleep. The AA said that it will discuss with the pilots to escalate during departure and also arrival. Now, this purple line is now red. The area is widened. As a result, Lok Kon Pai, this new LPH is at the boundary. Now, if you live within the blue and green circle, you find it noisy. In future, this project will be affected. Now, for these 4,000 units, are going to provide double glazing or even air conditioning for them if it is really too noisy. Secretary, I thank Mr. Tian for his questions. The latest take-up rate for NT-LPH is 96%. That's the latest figure. Mr. Tian, is true for individual projects. We have allowed them to adjust the ratio of Cat A and Cat B applicants. Cat A are those PLH applicants that have waited for more than 3 years. We have heard members' views. We want to fully utilize our resources. If we have dealt with or we have catered for all Cat A residents, and we have PRH applicants that have waited for close to 3 years and have earned great demand for housing, we will take them into consideration. Now, for Siu Lam, Lok Kon Pai, we understand that another 4,200 units will be provided. The Tingford Street will have to be widened. The junction will be widened. The Highways Department is excellent. They know the situation of the Castle Peak Way. So Hoi Wing Road of Tuen Mun to Gold Coast Phase 1 will have an additional traffic lane that can be completed by the end of the year. But it has got nothing to do with this section. Lok Kon Pai is here. The Tuen Mun interchange is here. This section. Now, for LPH residents, well, we do not provide private car parking spaces. and they won't be owning private cars. I'm talking about buses. All right. We will put a bus stop there for LPH residents. Of course, buses are more efficient given the capacity of buses. What about this section? The situation referred to by Mr. Tan will be discussed with the Transport Department to see whether there is room to improve the situation. Secretary, please liaise with the Transport Department to see what can be done for that section. What about noise? Regarding the NDF, the ASD is aware of the widened NDF area. The design of Lock-on Pine in Siu Lam is such that there is a setback near the waterfront. There is room. We have undertaken to provide features and design so that the area near the coast can be used, so that the site or the space can be utilized and the buildings will set back. No LP projects require double glazing so long as the glass is up to 6 millimeter in thickness. That is sufficient for noise insulation, but it's exactly at the boundary. Now, there is a big gap between the green and blue line. Residents are saying that they cannot sleep at night. Now the line will be further extended. What will happen to residents in Lock-on Pine? Lock-on Pine is quite a big site. The ASD can set back the units to avoid the boundary there. The Secretary has promised to take that into account, and whether it suits individuals' requirement, well, we should follow our established requirements for noise. But it is at the boundary. Now, it's not today. In 2023, it is the site is already right at the boundary of that NDF. Next, Mr. Dr. An Meng-yu. Thank you, Chairman. As the Secretary has always said, there is close liaison with the directly returned District Council members in building LPH projects. I'm pleased to see that Choi Hing Road of Chai Shat Lane will be made a demonstration zone for different kinds of public housing. On the same street, we have a transitional housing, LPH and LPH converted from a VSP. We have regular PRH and also a single block PRH. So they have all kinds of public housing on the same street. I'd like to talk about the relocation of LPH. Will you use the modules for building regular PRH in the future? With regard to the site at Kwun Tong Road and Chai Shat Lane, as mentioned in the paper, you are going to use a small portion of the site held by Water Supplies Department nearby for activity purpose. Now, the WSD site is used for storing materials and vehicles. Will you take up the whole site for open space and leisure use by LPH residents? This will not just provide more activity space for the LPH here. And this site is quite close to the MTR station nearby. So perhaps this is a good site for pedestrian access. Another point is about the site at Shun On. I understand that there is a gap about a year in the completion of the two sites. I hope you can consider merging the two sites into one to be undertaken by one developer or one constructor and one operator, because we're talking about very small matchbox type school premises. If the site is divided into two, then I think it is quite difficult to operate the two sites. So can you rationalize the completion dates of the two sites so that they can be commissioned together?
Thank you, thank you, Chairman. Secretary. Well, thank you, Dr. Ngan's point. Hong Kong has been flexibly responding to the different housing needs, and this is indeed a good story to be told about Hong Kong. Regarding the modules of light public housing, can they be used to build public rental housing? Well, light public housing is a quick solution. In a short period of time, there will be LPH units to provide houses to the local citizens. They will also have to be flexible in being moved to other areas. So they need to be buildable, but they also need to be able to be disassembled. So we need to conduct regular tests. Every 5 years, we'll need to check the joint to see whether they are safe. For traditional public housing, households have their own furniture, renovation, and so on. If we need to carry out tests every 5 years to existing public rental housing households, this is not an appropriate arrangement. So for the MIC approach, concrete is used. We no longer request that the modules need to be disassembled. So these are very different concepts. For Choy Shek Lane, I am aware of the storage area of the WSD in a nearby area. We've requested the WSD to vacate the area in order to vacate some space for residents in a nearby area. But not the entire area could be used. There are MTR alignments involved. So if we build light public housing atop the area, that is not completely appropriate. Regarding operation, we've already considered this point. We won't break down the projects into very small units. VSPs will provide some 150 units, so we'll sign operational contracts. A contract will comprise 4,500 units, and there will be a couple of different contracts for tendering. We hope that this is a suitable arrangement. Mr. Lo Wai Kwok. Dr. Lo. Thank you, Chairman. There are some positives about this proposal. First, there is a reduction in the overall cost. The administration has also taken on board our views. With a shortfall of land in Hong Kong, why do we not make good use of the VSPs? The administration has already taken on board our view. Well, I think it is favorable to use these VSPs, so I support this funding proposal. Many members asked about the VSPs. If there are no foreseeable purposes of these VSPs, can we extend the period of time applicable to VSPs, as with transitional housing and LPH? We shouldn't be overly simplistic. We should be pragmatic. The second batch of the LPH comes with a reduced cost, but they are still very expensive when we factor in the serviceable period. We are not splitting hairs, but if we divide by the serviceable period, this is still a major investment from the community. But we should not forget the reason why we wanted to promote light public housing. The decade-long scheme is quite good, but still it is backloaded. So in the first 5 years, how can we address the housing problem for the inadequately housed so that there will be a better living environment for children? For example, when they do homework, how can we provide them with a better living environment? So we are leaving no stones unturned in order to provide a better living environment for citizens in Hong Kong. This is what we need to do. Regarding the future plan of the VSPs, the administration should have a good plan. So not just in the coming 5 years, but a decade down the road, there should be a good plan. The areas of the VSPs are often good locations. That is, some locations that will be accepted by the public. There will be toilets, self-contained toilets, shower areas, open cooking spaces, and all these meet the criteria. They may be called light public housing, but whether light or not, we need to think pragmatically, and the administration should think as early as possible. The administration should consider, they should give some thought to the serviceable period to LPH on VSPs. And I look forward to a forward-looking plan from the administration. Thank you, Dr. Low. We'll bear in mind your very good opinions. Regarding the VSPs, we'll talk to the relevant bureaus to see whether the serviceable period can be extended. Dr. Low mentioned the social value of LPH, and I'd like to supplement. I visited transitional housing and talked to the households over there. I met with the children living there. Transitional housing has been implemented for 1 year or so. Some children made pastries. I was talking to the children. They were very confident. And that was what I did not see in children living in subdivided units, SDU. That is exactly why we need to build housing units as fast as possible in order to improve the living conditions. We need to work at full pelt. Dr. Low, these VSPs have playgrounds, they have school halls. So how can you provide special facilities having considered their own features? Well, I think the public will welcome this proposal. Right now, we still have some 20 minutes to go until the end of the meeting. Some members would like to speak. Some would like to speak in the second round. I'll draw a line after Mr. Kwok Wai Keung speaks. If members would like to speak, please indicate as soon as possible. For members in the electrical complex, please indicate your wish to speak as soon as possible. I want to manage time well. Some 20 members have already spoken today, so can we deal with this funding proposal today? If we can't finish the meeting by 10:30 today, we can extend the meeting slightly, but I'd like to deal with the voting of this funding proposal as soon as possible. Next, Mr. Kwok Wai Keung. Thank you, Chairman. We shouldn't forget why we started with light public housing. We want to help SDU households They are paying very high rents. We do want to provide one more avenue to these people to help them bid farewell to SDUs, to improve the living environment, as well as to save rentals. This funding proposal is worth our support. There are some adjustments, such as making good use of VSPs, saving some money, choosing some better places. So to prospective households, this is music to their ears. The only project on Hong Kong Island is Shangon Street in Chai Wan. I am concerned about time. Some vehicles used to be parked there, be they large or small. In the paper, it is set out that some places have already earmarked for parking these vehicles. I'd like to follow up on the status of the work. Is there any further room to compress the implementation of the project? I'd like this project, that is the only project in Hong Kong Island, to be implemented as soon as possible. Secretary, thank you. Indeed, this project can provide as many as 1,700 units. Time is of the essence. We expect in the middle of this year, that is in the second quarter of 2024, we can start works, and the works will be completed within 2 years. This is the fastest time when we factor in piling works. We'll keep a close eye on this work, this project, so that it will be implemented under our supervision. We have already earmarked some places, some in Chai Wan, some in Eldridge Bay, and I expect that these sites can be given to us before the relevant works commence. Next, Mr. Chang Han Pen. Let public housing is, well, SDU households look forward to. So we need to implement it as soon as possible. However, in the past, while we were serving the community, apart from SDU applicants, SDU households, some squatter huts were burned down due to fire. These residents do need a temporary place to tie them over. I'm not talking about bunk beds. Previously in Chin Wan, when there was a fire, I also conducted a site visit. The living conditions were deplorable. The living conditions were substandard. In Shek Lei, Block 10, there was temporary provisioning to tide some needy residents over. So I'd like to know if some projects can stay for a longer period of time for contingency use. Shek Lei, Block 10 has already been disassembled. So in light public housing project, have you identified which project has potential to be converted into temporary accommodation in transit center? So, in an eventualities, there is at least space for residents in need. Some urgently need a place to live in, but they still do not meet the criteria. In this aspect, can light public housing help them? Thank you, Mr. Chen. For interim housing, transitional housing, to house the homeless as a result of fire and so on. I'd like to invite Ms. Rosanna Law to speak on this.
Director, thank you, Ms. Chen, for your question. I recently went to Potin. Now, for the simple issues or relatively simple case, there will be immediate rehousing. For instance, in case of a fire in Potin, we have relatively simple temporary housing facilities for such victims of disasters. But when we talk about whole family, we have to consider privacy and also security. We'll try our best to improve the situation. Now, these people will only stay there for a few days, or at most up to a few months. If they have housing needs still, for those who are eligible for housing, in Potin, we have got transitional housing. There or surplus units to cater for residents who need them. If these people are not eligible for public housing, then of course the Social Welfare Department may provide compassionate arrangements. That is our long-standing policy. Mr. Chen asked whether LPH can cater for this group of people. Well, we will see to that in the future, but as of now, we have sufficient transitional housing units for them. All right, second round, Mr. Andrew Lam, 3 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Of course, we are all concerned about the construction costs of LPH. The cost is still on the high side. And the focus is on the lifespan of individual projects or units. That aside, I think we need to consider the social benefits. The Secretary has mentioned that on 2 occasions, unfortunately, there is no mention of that in the paper. In the long run, we should track the social benefits of LPH projects. First, the number of rounds that can be used per unit. Now, as we have more PRH developments available, then the duration of stay will be lower and the turnover time will be shorter. Secondly, for those who live in dilapidated or poor subdivided units of high rental, now I believe we have an estimate of the number of such households. Our tracking survey should also do that. This is a way to measure objectively the social benefits of LPH. While this is a PWSC meeting, we are concerned about the expenditure, but social benefits is also very real. I hope the Housing Bureau can follow up on the social benefits and report to us in due course. Secretary, thank you. Yes, we are aware that this is a very meaningful social project. The purpose is help upward mobility of grassroots families. The full set of data related to LPH projects will not just be useful for Hong Kong, but for other places. I welcome relevant organizations to compile data for us. We can collaborate with the academia, and hopefully we can share with you our data after proper analysis. Mr. Chu Kwok Keung, now in allocating households to 3 to 4 P units or 1 to P units, what are the considerations? For instance, if we have sufficient school places in a particular district, you should have fewer 1 to 2 P units. I think it will be ideal that in planning for different unit sizes, you can take into account the availability of school places in the vicinity. Now for Lokonpai, there is a plant, a factory already idle for a long time. So every time residents return home, they have to go past abandoned and idle industrial site. That is not very good. So would you consider demolishing the building or revitalize it or beautify it? Secretary, thank you, Mr. Ju. For large units, they will be allocated according to the wish of residents. We have to there are a number of factors at play, namely the household size as also the preference of applicants. The number of large units that can be provided in a site will depend on some factors. Take the St. Joseph's School as an example. The length and also the shape of the school is such that the ASD finds it easy to provide larger households. After operators have experience in running LPH projects, you understand that households are concerned mainly about first education for their children, employment, and also traffic and transport arrangements. For schools, we have the cooperation of the Education Bureau. Some of the operators are school operating bodies as well. They're able to find suitable school places in their own network to help residents. We talk about an old seawater desaltation plant near Lokonpai. The site is quite sizable. To pull it down, we need extra cost. We believe that the site can remain as it is. After all, it is still a distance away from the LPH project. We will include greening features or at its perimeter. We will slightly improve the situation to make it more pleasant. Thank you. Mr. Michael Tian. Thank you, Chair. I don't really need a response from the Secretary. I just want that at the Finance Committee meeting, we have a clear account of the following two things. First, the eligibility of residents for the LPH projects. Yes, I trust that you will provide the data. Second, that 2.5 kilometer of kilometer from Lokonpai to the Two Mun interchange. I don't think anyone will ride back to Two Mun MTR station for a train. So in future, to get to work for sure, the residents will travel to Two Mun interchange. For the 2.5 kilometers of road, I'd like to know the additional trips as a result of population intake. You give me the data if it is reasonable. I have no objection. Now, for the 30,000 units you're going to provide, I have no problem with the 9,000 elsewhere. My only problem is with this 4,000 units. And as for the aviation noise problem, now, right now, people living in the blue line and the green line, for people outside the NEF 25 zone, there is nothing the AA can do. Well, everyone will find it noisy. What if the units are not within this circle? Now, for this site, it is right at the boundary. Now, if you want to convince me that this is not a problem, I hope my plan is wrong. You show me in that plan that the yellow dot is outside the red line. Even if it is just outside the boundary, then I can convince myself because I am doing my duty to monitor the government. I am a reasonable person. I believe in data. And I don't know the additional number of bus trips. I find it strange that the Secretary cannot give us any projection. It's all right. Hopefully, at the FC meeting, I can have this data. That's it. Thank you, Secretary. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Tian, for your views. Perhaps after the meeting, we provide the information before the FC meeting. It's a bit difficult to give an oral reply. Let us have a better plan to explain from the AST. Yes, please. With regard to the provision of public transport, Mr. Tian would like to have some specific information. You have to give regard to the peak hours and also when the population intake is at its peak. We need supplementary information. Given that we are asking for fine details, it's much better that we have a paper. So please make it available after the meeting. All right. That ends questions from members. I believe all questions have been asked, and some members have already had a second round. And I will put this item to the vote. Will those in favor of PWSC 2023-24-29 and the proposals therein raise their hands? Those who are against, please raise their hands. Mrs. Regina, you are opposing? No. I am for the project. All right. There is no objection. Members who voted on the item are in favor of the item, so the paper is passed. As regards whether the FC meeting should further discuss this item in accordance with 41A of the PWSC procedure, I now put this item to the vote. Thus, PWSC proposes that the FC further discuss PWSC 2023-24-29, and that is the proposals therein. Will those in favor of the proposal raise their hands? Those who are against, please raise their hands. I'm of the view that members voting on the item oppose the proposal, and so the motion is negative. That is, there is no recommendation for the FC to further discuss this paper. So, it's expected that the funding application approved today will be submitted to the FC for consideration in February or afterwards. The next PWSC meeting will be held on the 21st of February 2024 from 8:30 to 10:30. So members, please attend the meeting punctually. The meeting ends here. Thank you very much.